Welcome to Turkish Legal News. We are going to talk about rental agreements today, and we are going to check it on the renter's point of view. So, first of all, what's a rental agreement? Rental agreement is a contract you make with the landowner to live in his house, in his place. This can also be a room, a house, a villa, whatever it is. In Turkey, it doesn't have to be written. You can make a lease contract without writing it down. In Turkey, normally the rental contracts are being made for 1 year. However, it doesn't have to be 1 year because it is getting extended every year if the renter does not terminate the contract. You heard it very correct. The landowner doesn't have the right to terminate the contract. So, what do we need to control when we are signing a rental contract as a renter? First of all, you need to make sure that the owner of the property is written correctly in the rental document. Secondly, you need to check if the property is residential or if it's a workplace. You need to check it how it is rented actually. You can rent a place as a residential or as a workplace. The residential is advantageous for you. This is because you can use the 25% increase rule as if the property is residential. However, if the property is a workplace and it is rented as workplace to you, then you cannot apply the 25% rule to that property. Third one, deposit. So you are going to give a deposit to the landowner with no doubt. Because the landowners are trying to protect themselves when you are leaving the property. So you are going to give it no matter why. However, what you can do is, before giving the deposit, you should definitely go and check the property. The fourth, you should be sure about the open address on the lease agreement because it can be written false or you can get scammed. You might have a document. However, if the address is not right, then you are not eligible to live in that place. And the last one, if you can, of course, sign no other thing, no other document than the lease document. I'm telling you this because in Turkey, it is very common to make the renter sign an eviction notice. The eviction notice is something different than the lease agreement. With this document, if you sign it, then the landowner can get you out whenever he wants. Actually, I'm going to tell you this afterwards. However, if you can avoid it, just avoid it. Let's say you are a renter and your landlord does want from you the rent like triple. What should you do? At this point, it is very important to control your rental agreement. I'm telling you this because in the law it clearly states that until 5 years, the landowner cannot ask the rent as it is, cannot increase the rent. The landowner cannot increase the rent above the law. So what happens at this point? The landowner does want from you triple of the current rent. You just have to be calm and tell the landowner that he can only make 25% increase. This is valid until 2024 July. So until then, until 2024 July, just you can make the 25% increase. So what is going to happen? You should just keep sending your rent to the landowner's bank account with 25% increase and do nothing else. And what happens if you face a court? In the law, it clearly states that until 5 years, the landowner cannot ask this rent above the law. However, there's also another thing. If the contract is unbearable for the landowner, then the renter has to increase the rent. How do we mean unbearable? Let's say you are paying 2,000 Turkish lira rent and normal rents are now 20,000 in your area. So this makes it unbearable. However, if you pay around 10,000, 15,000 and the rent is around 20,000, then we cannot say that this is unbearable. So even if the landowner files a case against you, he is going to definitely lose it and you don't have to pay anything at all. However, if the landowner is right and he sues you for it, then what you are going to face is, at the end, of course, the rents, the increased rents, the attorney fee, and the costs for the court. What happens if your landowner doesn't want you at his house anymore? So he basically wants to kick you out. What should you do? Let's say they have sent a warning letter to you from the notary. It is very important to check what is it about. Because in the law, if the landowner needs the place for himself or for his daughter or son, then it is possible to get you out from his own house. However, there are also some things, some tricks here. The landowners are now using this rule in their favor. They are trying to kick their renters out by using this rule even though they do not need the house. So it is very important for you to listen to me here, because what I am going to tell can get you a compensation. Let's say the landowner has sent you a notice stating that he needs the house for his son, for his daughter, for his mother, whatever it is. And he's telling you to move out. And you do not want to move out, and you did respond or you didn't respond at all, and you are facing a lawsuit right now. They have filed a lawsuit against you stating that they need the house and you need to get out of the house. First of all, I want to talk to you about the duration of the courts. Normally, I don't do that. But in this situation, like these days in Turkey, especially in Istanbul, the courts are full with rental contracts, rental courts actually. This has gained a lot of popularity actually. However, it takes quite longer right now. Let's say they have filed an eviction file against you. The court's first hearing date will be after around a year. So what you can do is just stay in the house, keep sending your rents, and keep waiting for the hearing date to come. Without a court order, no one can disturb you and no one can kick you out. This is like being in a country based on law, and Turkey is a country based on law. So after the first hearing, what is going to happen at the eviction hearings, at the eviction cases? The eviction cases are very important in Turkey, and the judges are being very careful because they do not want the landowners to misuse this rule against the renters. What are they doing? They are checking if their claim is right and if they really need the house. And they are checking it by checking their title deeds. Let's say your landowner has another place, another house in the same area as where you are living right now. So then this court is going to get rejected definitely. But if the landowner has a place, has a house anywhere else, like let's say you are living in Beylikdüzü and the landowner has only one house in Beylikdüzü and the other one is in Fatih and the other one is somewhere else. At this point, if the landowner can state it clearly, can state the need clearly to the judge, then you might get kicked out. This is very important. But they are really trying to be against the misuse. So right now, usually courts based on this law, this rule, are getting rejected. There are also other things to get you evicted. Like the landowner can claim that he's going to do some reparations in the house. However, we do not see this so common in Turkey. The main thing is the courts are taking too long in Turkey. And in the meantime, you can keep living in that place where you have rented. So what does it gain you? Let's say the eviction case, the first hearing was after 1 year, as I said. And at the second hearing, the judge has decided for you to leave the place. How much time did you gain? Like 1 year and 6 months. And this is, trust me, this is the minimum time they can get a decision. Let's say after 1.5 years, they got a decision. They are going to write the decision up and they have to execute the decision at the execution office. Before that, you can take this to the upper court. And the upper court is going to take at least 1 year. And there's another upper court for it. These cases are taking usually 3 years, 4 years, maybe even 5 years. And after that, they have to execute the verdict. So to execute the verdict, they need to go to the execution office at the courtrooms. This is how you execute an order in Turkey. We call it icra dairesi. The English one is execution office. They have to take their decision to the execution office. They have to take a date to come to your house and get you evicted. So how does this happen? And why is this important? I recommend you to stay until the agents come to your office and take you out. You know why? Because once you are evicted by a case file, by a court verdict, and it is based on need, and the landowner, after they kicked you out, after they evicted you, the landowner gave it again to someone else to rent, then you can get a compensation. But if you go out at the first place, if you go out after a warning letter, then you cannot get the compensation. And even after the court order, if you go out without them executing the order, without the agents coming to the house, you cannot get the compensation. However, if the agents come to your house and they evict you, let's say you already had evicted the place and they come to your house, they change the lock, and you leave the place. And after that, you hear that, you see that the landowner has put someone else in your place. Then you can file him for compensation and you can get money out of him. This was very important, so I wanted to tell you this. And another thing, eviction notice. In Turkey, eviction notice is almost the most important thing regarding rental issues. It is written in the law that if you get an eviction notice from the renter, then you can kick him out anytime you want. How does it work? This is because of the execution. Right now, even if you get a court order, you have to execute it at the execution offices. With this eviction notice, if it is signed by you, then they can directly go to the execution office and execute that document. What do you have to do to go against it and to object against it? Once you give an eviction notice, then they are able to put any date they want in that document. Of course, this is when you give the eviction notice without any date. Let's say you have given the eviction notice without any date. So they have put some date on it and they have put it on execution. What can you do? You can go to the execution office and object against it. You should say that there wasn't any date on it when you did sign it. You can, of course, object against the signature. What happens if you object to it? And when should you object it? Once they start to execute the eviction notice, you will receive a letter at your address. This letter is going to state that the landowner doesn't want you in his house anymore. So, what should you do? You have to object against it in 7 days. This is very important. If you do not object against it in 7 days, then the landowner is eligible to kick you out. In 7 days, you can object to it. And what happens when you object to it? Then they have to go to the court to lift this objection. So they are going to go to the court about this file. They are going to say that maybe you have objected against the signature, the date. They have to prove that there was a date on it, the signature is right, and everything is right. And this is also taking another year, maybe even more. So during the meantime, you can still stay in that house by paying 25% increase, and maybe for years you can stay in there because there's also an upper court for it. So it might take up to 3 years, 4 years until the case is resolved and they can kick you out. At the end, the court is going to order if the execution file can move forward or not. So at the last point, you will see the verdict and you can just leave the house or not. It's based on you. You can also leave the house when the agents come, but at the eviction notice executions, there is no compensation. At the eviction notice, you promise to the landlord that you are going to leave the place whenever landowner asks.